For 3 months, my world had shrunk to the size of the man across the hall, a man who I believed had no idea I existed. And then, for one night, one impossible, breathless night, he stepped out of my dreams and into my arms. He was real. This is the story of the man who lived in the apartment opposite mine, and the silver lighter he left behind like a ghost. It rests on my desk even now, a cold, heavy promise next to my keyboard. Sometimes, I flick it open, just for that sharp, metallic sound that cuts through the silence. I never light it. I don't smoke. It's my totem. The only proof I have that the warmth I felt wasn't just a fever dream. Before him, my life wasn't a life. It was a schedule, a sterile, predictable orbit of pixels and deadlines, lived out in a high-rise apartment that was always too clean and unnaturally quiet. I'm a graphic designer, which sounds vibrant, but is mostly the hum of a laptop and a client's endless chorus of minor tweaks. My days were a flat line of lukewarm coffee and takeout for one. Loneliness wasn't just a feeling, it was my roommate. And then, one afternoon, he moved in across the hall, and the silence was shattered for good. I saw him first on a Thursday. I was on my balcony, trying to soak up the last warmth of the sun, when the moving truck groaned at the curb, and there he was. He moved with the kind of easy strength that seemed to bend the world around him, lifting a heavy box as if it were weightless. A deep, genuine laugh floated all the way up to my perch, and it felt like the first true note of music I'd heard in years. After that, my balcony became my sanctuary, my confessional. It was a midnight ritual. I would kill the lights, slide open the glass door, and just watch. His apartment was a mirror of mine, his balcony a perfectly lit stage for a one-man show. He had a routine. He'd step into the cool night air, shirtless, and just breathe, his chest rising and falling with the pulse of the city. Sometimes he'd stretch, the muscles in his back and shoulders moving under the moonlight like a living sculpture. Other times, he'd be on his phone, his voice a low, urgent murmur I could never quite catch, pacing like a beautiful, caged animal. I memorized the cartography of his shadows, the way he'd rake a hand through his dark hair, a gesture that spoke of a deep-seated stress. I learned the shape of the black puffer jacket he'd pulled tight around his frame as the nights bled into winter. He was a story without a name, a life without a biography. He was simply my midnight neighbor, and I was the silent keeper of his secrets. What started as curiosity soon bloomed into a sprawling, intricate fiction I wrote in my head. I named him Leo. It felt strong, like him. In my version of his life, Leo was an artist, a sculptor, or a musician who spoke with his hands. Those tense, whispered phone calls, they were with a dramatic, toxic ex. He was finally finding the courage to escape. The quiet, contemplative moments, staring out at the skyline. That was him gathering his strength, finding his center, before creating something beautiful. My own life began to feel thin, translucent. I'd stare at a blank project on my screen for hours, replaying the way the city lights reflected in the windows of his eyes. I felt so connected to him that his moods dictated my own. A storm cloud on his brow meant a day of leaden dread for me. A ghost of a smile on his lips, and my own world was flooded with light. I was living a life parallel to his, from the safety of the shadows. He was the cure for my crushing loneliness, and he had no idea he was even the prescription. And then, the storm came. The sky tore itself open, and rain fell in furious sheets, drumming against the glass. No balcony show tonight. The disappointment was a sharp, physical ache, like the season finale of my favorite show being canceled. I resigned myself to a sad dinner, and the suffocating quiet I once called normal. Then I heard it. A sound so foreign in my silent world, I thought I'd imagined it. A knock on my door. I froze, my breath catching in my throat. I peered through the peephole, and my heart didn't just stop. It shattered. It was him, Leo, soaked to the bone, dark hair plastered to his forehead, looking impossibly, devastatingly real. My hand trembled, as I turned the lock. "Hi," was all I could manage, my voice a whisper. "Hey," he said, a sheepish, almost wounded smile gracing his face. "This is going to sound crazy, but I saw your light on. I couldn't be alone in there tonight." He held up a bottle of red wine, a silent truce. "Please." I stepped back, and he brought the entire universe in with him, filling my sterile apartment with an energy that vibrated in the air. As he shed his wet jacket, my eyes traced the familiar landscape of his arms and shoulders. He wasn't a fantasy anymore. He was here. We talked for hours. His name was Alex, not Leo. He was an investigative journalist, not a sculptor, working a story so dangerous he'd gone into hiding. Then he looked at me, really looked, and confessed he'd noticed me too. A silent silhouette on my own balcony, night after night. I found it calming, he admitted, his voice low. It felt like someone else was awake in the world. It made me feel less alone. The air between us grew thick, charged with 3 months of unspoken questions and shared solitude. The wine, the storm raging outside, the raw vulnerability in his eyes, it all converged into a single, overwhelming truth. He reached across the table, his fingers grazing mine, and a current passed between us. The next thing I knew, we were standing, and he was kissing me. It wasn't a kiss of haste or hunger. It was slow and deep, a conversation our bodies were having, saying everything our words couldn't. It was the sound of two solitary worlds finally, mercifully, colliding. I woke to the pale, forgiving light of morning. For one hazy, perfect second, I felt a warmth in my soul I hadn't known existed. I rolled over, a smile already on my lips, ready to meet his eyes. But the other side of the bed was empty. Not just empty, but starkly, unnaturally cold. I sat bolt upright, my heart beginning a frantic, panicked rhythm against my ribs. "Alex?" The silence that answered was heavier, more absolute than any silence I had known before. I flew through my apartment. His jacket was gone. The wine bottle, gone. The only evidence he was ever there were 2 glasses by the sink. And on the table, exactly where he'd been sitting, was his lighter. I snatched it up. It was solid, real, the kind of thing you leave behind by mistake, or as a promise. I ran to my door and looked down the hall. His door was ajar. A cold dread washed over me as I pushed it open. The apartment was a cavern, utterly empty. No furniture, no boxers, just faint, ghostly indentations in the carpet where a life used to be. He hadn't just left, he had vanished. It was the cruelest whiplash imaginable. To be seen so completely by another person, only to be erased from their life by sunrise. We had shared something real, but it was a story with the final chapters ripped out. That was 6 months ago. I still go out on my balcony some nights. The habit is carved too deep to stop now. I just stare at the dark, empty windows across the way, a hollow echo of what was, and I have the lighter. It's my souvenir from the man who blew into my life, like a hurricane, and disappeared like smoke. I don't know if he left it as a promise to return, or if it was just a careless mistake in his rush to become a ghost again. Maybe it doesn't matter. It's a reminder that for one night, I wasn't just watching a story, I was in it. An unfinished, haunting, beautiful story. Have you ever had an almost love story? A connection that burned so brightly and then just disappeared? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to know I'm not the only one. And if this story resonated with you, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more.
Walk away, didn't say goodbye. Two silhouettes disappear into the night. I take my time, nothing matters when I'm in your arms. slow the river goes. We rest our bodies on sticks and